There's winners, and there's nothing else. I don't give a shit what those pinkos over in Russia say. You want to be a loser, you go live in Russia. I'm not a loser. I'm a winner. I'm an American. Who wants to be John Wayne? Who wants to go out there and grab a root and hang on? Who wants to get a mean on? Get a mean on, son. Let me see you get a mean on, son. Now, who wants it? I want to know. Who wants this? Who wants to get a mean on right now? Who wants it? I want it!
Welcome to another podcast of Talking Irish. The beginning part was the locker room speech from, 1990-something movie with Anthony Michael Hall, Johnny Be Good, and I like that one, and I think it's time that there needs to be some sort of wake-up call on some levels for the Fighting Irish, and the explanation of get a mean on. I think these guys need to kind of get after it for 4 quarters as opposed to towards the end of the game, which is what they seem to be doing so far. For those of you not keeping track, this is the first quarter is kind of over for the season. 3 games in a 12-game season, meaning we got our first quarter down. And at 2-1, it's a little different look than last year's start on a number of levels that we'll talk to during today's podcast. I've come to the realization and the kind of the understanding that this is not last year's team, and I'm okay with that. And even the players that are back are not last year's players, and I'm okay with that. Last year was something special and something unique. I say maybe once in a generation. I'm not saying they won't go undefeated again anytime soon or contend for a national championship anytime soon. It's just maybe it wasn't expected a little early. There were some things that happened that weren't expected that made it special, and really maybe it was the starting off in Ireland and the culmination of the season beating USC to punch their ticket from South Bend to South Beach. But that was last year. It was special, and this year is different, and it can be just as special, just in a different way. So let's take a kind of look at where we are and how we got there for the first quarter and where this team is and where it needs to go. I think another 12-0 regular season might have been a bit of a push for this team, and that's okay. But I think it's the way we've gotten to 2-1. I can live with the loss in some sense to Michigan. I think on that night the better team won, but I think that's a game that definitely could have been for the Irish and could be 3-0. But 2-1's where we're at. And let's take a quick rundown so far. Temple should have been more of a tune-up game than it was. The Irish won handily, never really in doubt. However, I think there was some opportunities to. And again, I know Brian Kelly even said he didn't want to show everything he had in the toolbox. But I think there were some other opportunities we missed there. Obviously, some mistakes, a couple issues, but still kind of turned out as we expected. Michigan, I don't know what to say. I think because it could have been a victory, and on that night the better team won. It's a bit tough pill to swallow. But Michigan is going to probably end up being a very good team, even though they barely won last weekend against a team that they should have definitely shellacked. But that's, I think, maybe one of the great things about college football. So, again, some things that really exposed the defensive weakness was really in the Michigan game. Giving up 41 points was just, I think, unfathomable, and I think the passing game that Michigan had was just really showed the underdeveloped or maybe overhyped impression that we had against for the Irish defensive backfield. Last year it was a big concern, mostly because we had so many early injuries even before the season started, and we had so much unproven talent that just went out there and did a great job, from Kavari Russell to and again, he's back, and I know we lost Zeke Mata, but I think we felt much more confident in who we had back there this year at the beginning of the season than we did last year. But they're definitely showing some weaknesses. The defensive front seven, of course, without Cap and Manti, are a different team, and we're seeing it. It's not all doom and gloom, but there are definitely some things being exposed that defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators from other teams are really taking a look at and saying, can we do the same thing? And quite frankly, it's kind of been done with lesser talent than we may see later in the year. There are definitely better teams coming up in the next 4 games that is really the meat of the schedule. So, the Irish are 2-1. No one's hitting the panic button. Definitely a one-loss team could make a championship game run. I think a more realistic goal is definitely getting into a BCS bowl and winning that, and I think that's probably more important than getting to a BCS championship game and losing. So moving forward, we've got some things to work on, and Kelly and his crew, it's not just physical, but I got to believe it's mental as well. I think overall the way I want to look at this is kind of maybe by teams, offense, defense, special teams, and kind of go down the roster, starting off with the 2-deep chart and kind of go from there and expand pretty much where we are and concerns, and also pluses. There's a lot of pluses here, and I think the first one I'm going to look at is we're a 2-1 team that has not played nearly to the potential that we thought we could or should. One, and that's with as a whole, whether it be an offensive unit or defensive unit and special teams, but also individual players. There's a number of players who are playing decent ball, but definitely could be playing better. And then there's a lot of talent out there that we just haven't had the opportunity to see that could still explode on the field to really help this team moving forward. So let's start with the offense. Offensively, Tommy Rees is definitely better than most people thought. 3 games, 300-yard passing games, only 2 interceptions on the year, and I think his incompletions, a lot of them are throwaways, and I see some drops as well. Don't kid yourself. There's still some opportunity for him to continue to improve. He's not as great as we need a starting quarterback at Notre Dame to be, but he's definitely, and I'm hoping I'm not jinxing him here, improved his game. 2 interceptions through 3 games. It could, and a lot of people are speculating it would have been a lot worse in regards to that number. And again, the 300 yards, I'm seeing some good things. I think, and this is an overall offense piece for Kelly, he's not getting the opportunity to throw the ball downfield. I think we saw that very clearly in the Purdue game. Spread the field, let the receivers go downfield, and good things seem to be happening. So hopefully we'll see that more in the very near future. So Reese is having a good season. I don't think we could have asked for much more from him. Obviously, I think he's a little bit better in the run game in terms of having the ability to run, but he's still not going to be a dual-threat quarterback, and defenses are going to key in on that, and that's definitely going to be a negative in planning for him, or a negative for us when the team's plan for the Irish. So Tommy Rees is good. Andrew Hendricks, I think, has got 1 completion on 4 passes. Hasn't had an opportunity to really show anything. Hasn't had an opportunity to get any work in. So the only concern I have there is if, God forbid, something happens to Tommy that he cannot go, Hendricks is going in with pretty cold, and he's a true backup quarterback in that sense. And I think that also looks towards the future as will he be back or not in the future. But currently, he just hasn't had the opportunity to show it, and we'll have to wait and see. Malik Zaire has been out with mono and is just getting apparently cleared to play when he had a tweet, which I think upset Kelly, and he may or may not have him be cleared to play. He may be on suspension, but that's neither here nor there. He has got no touches. From half the camps is probably saying, hey, this is good, save a year of eligibility. The other half saying this kid needs to get some snaps under his belt before either he has to because of an emergency situation, or next year where he may have to start. Looking at the wide receivers, I think T.J. Jones has kind of been what we had hoped he would be. He's playing solid, run good routes, making some good catches, and has definitely seemed to be pretty much the leader of the receiving corps, and hopefully he'll continue to at least do that, if not do some more. DeVaris Daniels is just showing what he can do. He will definitely have an opportunity to continue to grow his potential. He's just catching things that being thrown up there, and I'm looking forward to seeing him the rest of the season. He's just been playing real well. Chris Brown has had a couple routes that have looked really good, and we haven't had the chance to see him turn on the afterburners and really go down the field, and that kind of goes back to Kelly hasn't made a lot of play calls that have allowed the Irish to open up the offense. And Reese's one long pass last week, he had one that was 50 yards in the air. I think it was DeVars's 82-yard touchdown run. That was 82 yards receiving, but there was about 50 of that was a nice tight spiral from Reese. So I think his arm strength's gotten a little bit better. He's still not one of the strongest ones in college, but he's definitely getting better, and I hope that, Chris Brown has the opportunity to see some of that. Dan Smith, a senior who at 6'4", almost 215 pounds, has kind of underachieved while he's been in South Bend, and we haven't seen much from him. Corey Robertson has been on the field, and looks fair, but as a true freshman, I think there's some more to come as the season goes on, and I think he could definitely help win some games down the road. So at the receiving corps, I think we're in good shape. DeVaris Daniel is definitely the bright spot, if not on the team, definitely on offense, and for sure in the wide receiver role. At running back, George Atkinson III has not stepped up to be the leader that we had all hoped for. He's playing fair. He hasn't had a chance, or hasn't made himself get a chance to show his breakaway speed. He comes down on first contact pretty much. He comes down relatively easily. He's getting a little bit better lowering the pads, but not enough. So he hasn't really made the most of his opportunities, and it's really allowed Amir Carlisle and Cam McDaniel to step in and really show what they have to offer. And in my opinion, Amir Carlisle definitely should be the number one back. He is broken a couple runs, but I think there's a lot more to come with him. I'm very excited about his future in South Bend. I really think that at the end of this year, he'll be looking back and saying, yeah, he might be the best offensive weapon we have. Next to him, Cam McDaniel has shown what we really thought he'd be when he came to South Bend. Just a tough-nosed running back, maybe a little bit faster, maybe having some better cuts than we had thought. He definitely is not a big physical person. I mean, he's 5'10", 207, but he definitely runs at a bigger body than that. He definitely doesn't come down on first contact, tough as nails, and but maybe a little bit faster and a little bit quicker than we had thought as well. So I think Carlisle and McDaniel are the 1-2 punch. We haven't had an opportunity to really see too much out of Greg Bryant and Folston, but I think the two freshmen will. We've hoped that they were going to have some opportunities both in Purdue and in Temple to be up a ton of points and allow them to get some work, but that just hasn't happened. So, again, there's potential for them to still explode this year and really be impressive. So they're both running fair when they do have the ball. They're not making terrible mistakes or anything along those lines. It's just not a big body of work to look at. Will Mahone is playing a little bit in that slot position, not so much at running back, so I wouldn't really put him in with the running backs. He hasn't done anything great, but he hasn't done anything terrible, and I think he'll probably work his way into continuing to grow into an offensive weapon, hopefully this season and down the road for the Irish. Looking at going towards the line, but specifically the tight end position, Troy Nicholas has played well, has had a couple great catches this year. I think we're underutilizing him still a little bit. I think he's got potential, and I know they're bringing him along maybe a little bit slowly in regards to the passing game, but at his size, he's nearly 6'7" and 270 plus pounds. He's a big target. He is athletic. He is strong, and I think there's he's a very good example of someone that's played well, has some good catches, has scored, and really is not even close to reaching his fullest potential or being used in his fullest potential. Ben Koyak and Alex Welch are there. They're not injured, and again, the two other players that need to continue to develop and make contributions on the field when they're there, as opposed to being any sort of hindrance. The line has, I almost want to say underachieved. They've played well. They've had times they look very good, and other times they look good, but this should be a great offensive line. And They're protecting Tommy fairly well. They're opening up some holes, but I think definitely against the talent they've gone up against, they've underachieved. I don't know if it's the chemistry. I don't know if it's just the play calling in terms of what they're trying to accomplish, but I just definitely feel that this is a unit that is underachieving. They're not doing poorly, but they could definitely do a lot better. Ronnie Stanley is I would say, I hate to say the weak link. I see him making some mistakes, but as a first-year starter, as a sophomore, I can live with it. He's definitely playing above that, and he'll only get better. There's no doubt about that. The rest of the line is solid. Nick Martin's doing a decent job at his first time at center, and with another couple years of eligibility to continue to learn it, the future looks bright in the center of the offensive line. Chris Watt, Zach Martin, and Christian Lombard, they're playing what we expected. Steve Elmer's come in and has played well for a true freshman, and again, kind of give us an insight to how well that they may play. He may play, whether it's later this year or in the years to come. So the offensive line is solid. Good to pretty good, but that should be a great offensive line and just dominate the line of scrimmage. So offensively, I think the Irish are in good shape. 300-yard games in all three contests for Tommy Rees is good. Amir Carlisle stepping up, and Cam McDaniel, and really, quite frankly, even to Atkinson, his credit that he could still be blowing out a couple games in the future. There's a lot of growth that could still happen. Again, if you told me we were going to score 31 against Michigan, I would think for sure that was going to be a win. It didn't happen. So offensively, I'm pretty happy. Brian Kelly, I know, said they got to step up even more as the defense did last year. I think we'll continue to see growth. So offensively, I'm feeling good. The first quarter, I'd give offense. It's hard to say. I think there are parts that I'm disappointed in, and the parts that I think I'm more impressed with than I was expecting. So overall, it's a solid effort. On the defensive side of the ball, I think most people would say this is a disappointment. From a statistical aspect, I think that's pretty easy to see in terms of the amount of points that have been given up compared to last year. That kind of just jumps off the page with giving up 41 points even to a Michigan team that really played well. They did a good job, and quite frankly, they weren't able to handle Purdue as well as they should have. So from a defensively and even the eye test, I think a lot of people would initially say the defense is in some sort of trouble. I don't think the communication is quite there yet. But similar to the offense, I think they're fair, but there's a lot of opportunity for improvement. So let's take a quick look at the two-deep chart and kind of position by position for the defensive side of the ball. Sheldon Day has shown his motor that we were expecting. I think part of it is he's had the opportunity to kind of have a little bit more opportunity to get to the quarterback or get in the backfield, with Lewis Nix taking on double teams every single down, and pretty much it's, I wouldn't say they're necessarily always running away from the other side of the field, but I think they're definitely not standing there looking at to run at Stephon Tuitt. So I think Sheldon Day has had more opportunity, or a lot of people feel he's had more opportunity to put up some numbers, and it necessarily hasn't happened. Again, hasn't played poorly, has played well, and actually very well at moments, but I think it's just an opportunity for him to continue to grow. And let's face it, this kid's only a sophomore, so he should only be getting better. Lewis Nix is another one where statistically it's hard to get a lot of statistics on defense at the nose tackle position. Lewis Nix draws double and triple teams quite often throughout each and every game, and he's still making the most of it. I don't want to say he takes plays off. That's not what I'm going to say here, but there are plays where he just seems to just smack people in the face, and other plays it doesn't happen. And I don't think it's from his lack of effort. I think it's just the schemes they're running against him. So he's playing very well, even though his stats may not show it. Stephon Tuitt, we'll go back real quick because I'll put Kona Schwenke in at the nose tackle position. He's come in, he's played on the line, and I'm I think he'll be able to continue to support that defensive line as needed, and that could be a big benefit in some games down the road where players are getting tired later in the season, preventing injuries. So I just want to make sure Kona gets a little recognition. Stephon Tuitt, I think a lot of people would say they really think something's wrong with him physically, not just the weight. He's got 4 tackles in 3 games. That's he's got a sack. He's also got an interception for a touchdown, but it's not the Stephon Tuitt we're expecting. At times he's played well. He's chasing down quarterbacks. He's getting there. He just seems to be a step behind. So is it a matter of his weight or is something else wrong? I'm not sure. Kelly has been impressed apparently, and he said he thought that his best game was against Purdue. So again, here's a guy who everyone says he's not injured. They're impressed with his play. His stats can only go up and really only benefit this team. Prince Shembo is another player that I just haven't heard his name called a lot. I see him running around the field, kind of like Stephon Tuitt, just a step behind on people. He's playing well. He's just missing out on some bigger plays, as I think that seems to be and I'll use him even though he's an outside linebacker. I'll put his hand down and come off the edge, and at barely 6'2". I'd hate to put him at defensive end position even at a play. He's just a step behind from really having some good numbers. Ishaq Williams is finally apparently coming into the player that everyone had hoped he would when he came to South Bend. He's got the more prototypical type of defensive end body, even though he's listed as an outside linebacker at just over 6'5", 260 plus pounds. He's able to play outside linebacker, but he definitely, when he puts his hand on the ground, comes from the outside and does well. So I'd say Ishaq Williams is definitely one of the bright and I hate to say surprises because we really expected him to do well, but he's definitely impressed me more than I was expecting from him. The inside linebacker position, I'd almost say, is a point of disappointment. And I'll start by calling out Dan Fox and Carlo Calabrese. These are fifth-year seniors that really have not just started playing last year. They've been getting good field time for 4 years now. They haven't been sitting on the bench after the redshirt seasons. They've been playing, and they're just not playing as well as we need them to do. They're just not. And they're not playing poorly, but they definitely need to play better, especially in pass coverage. Along those lines, Jarek Grace, he actually had 10 tackles against Purdue. He's learning the position. He's not done poorly, but we need him to step up. I think the middle linebacker position is a soft part in our defense, especially on pass. There's a lot of dink and dunks coming in that are picking up yardage, getting first downs, and moving the chains, and that's really hurting our defense and keeping them on the field a lot longer than they need to be. So, to a point, I'm going to call out the middle linebacking crew and say they need to step up. On the other outside linebacker position, Jalen Smith has had plays that look like a true freshman, but you also see something special is coming down the road with this kid. He's got some size, he's got some speed, he's got some raw skill, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him develop throughout this year. So I think he will continue to grow more than some of the other seasoned veterans because he's got a higher ceiling to get to. But he will continue to grow, and that will be a bright spot in my opinion. Moving to the defensive secondary, as I said earlier, I think they're probably our biggest, and I'll use the term disappointment. Kavari Russell, who after one play at Navy seemed to just fit right in there last year, and as a true freshman, made a lot of All-American teams, or for freshmen, All-American teams, and he is not. I don't know if it's a sophomore slump or what have you, but he definitely needs to step up. Austin Collinsworth, I know he's had a couple great plays, but not consistent. Matthias Farley, Bennett Jackson. I mean, the list can go on and on with the two deeps. And I know Bennett Jackson's had a pick 6 against Purdue, but outside of that, it just hasn't been good enough. It's bend, don't break, but it's been broken quite a bit this season at the expense of our defensive secondary. And with the linebackers not being a good set of pass coverage linebackers, we need our safeties and cornerbacks to step up and play better. So overall, defensively, I think we could definitely say it's a disappointment. There's no panic button being hit. I think there's a number of two deeps that are contributing, not quite ready to step up and steal a position, and I don't think we want that, because that means the positions that are being taken have failed, and we cannot afford to have that. We just need, as a whole, both the offense and the defense to maybe gel a little bit better, because the next part of the season, the next 3 to 4 games, are make or breaks. Could we lose one and still make a BCS bowl? Absolutely. But it is not going to be as easy as making it with one loss that we already have. So we're definitely going to need both teams to gel a little bit more, offense and defense. Quick look at special teams. The kicking game was a little bit of a point of confusion earlier in the year. I think Kyle Brinza has definitely cemented himself as the number one kickoff guy. He should be kicking every kickoff through the end zone. He's got that ability. There's no reason to have any return on kickoffs, and that needs to be told to him loud and clear. In terms of the punt game, he's barely fair at best. I expect, if he doesn't get his act together real quick, I would say Alex Wolfeck, the transfer in from Wake Forest, will be getting those snaps. Kyle is coming into his own as a place kicker. I'm pretty confident with our field goal teams. And when he goes on the field, I know he's got the legs and the accuracy is coming up. So from a kicking standpoint, I feel solid, except for the punt game. And I think that might be able to be remedied maybe with some tweaks with Kyle or getting Alex in the game. So I'm not really too concerned about that. In terms of kick return and punt return, couldn't have been any worse than last year, and it hasn't been, but we really could use some spark on the return games. It doesn't necessarily, although it would be greatly appreciated, come in the form of a touchdown. T.J. Jones has shown that he's able to at least catch the ball. George Atkinson has been okay as well, but again, we need some breakouts from those guys if we're to really ignite some fire on the rest of the team. I know after 3 games, a lot of being made in terms of the coaching staff and Kelly needing to maybe take on a little bit more in regards to motivating this team. That maybe the leadership hasn't stepped up amongst the players. They may not be as boisterous as they had hoped for, or just the leadership hasn't stepped up. That may be the case, but I think if you've ever played a team sport, there at some point has to be leadership from within. The coach can only do so much, so we're going to have to look inside. I think at some point, somebody on this team is definitely going to have to grab everyone and lead from within. 3 games into the season, the staff's got to really settle in at some of the positions and say, here's our running back. Here, I think we're just getting almost too predictable that if Amir's in, this is what's going to happen. If Cam's in, this is what's going to happen, and so on. And plus, I heard this and I agree. I don't care if it's running back or goalie or pitcher. In sports, most of the time you need to get into a rhythm, and if every play it's a different running back, I just think it's going to be real tough for any one of these backs to get any kind of rhythm, and working with the line as well. So I think we definitely need to bear down and pick some running backs to really lead the charge. I think we're going to also have to look at our passing game, and I don't understand why we're not passing it downfield more, but that needs to be cleaned up as well. I think we have to have faith in the direction that Kelly's taken the team and why he's doing what he's doing. Obviously, he's earned that after last season, and we all bought into it, and his team bought into it. So at 2-1, nobody's hitting the panic button, or they should be hitting the panic button. But I think there's definitely a lot of questions in regards to players, player times, etc. So as we move forward after these first 3 games, I think there's things that fans know and commentators may know in terms of Cam McDaniel's toughness and DeVaris Daniels catching some nice passes and undisputedly that Reese is a much better quarterback with 300-yard gains, only 2 interceptions, and that statistically the defense may not be as much of a powerhouse as they were last year, but this is still a top 25 team. This is still a team on track to finish very strongly, and the fact is they're going to be taking on some tough opponents, especially with Michigan State coming into town with the number 1 ranked defense. That's a little bit different than what we expected last year, but as we move forward, we have to take one game at a time. I know it's a little cliche, but last year we barely beat Pitt. We escaped playing Purdue and went on to play in the national championship game, so maybe it's not so much how you do it as long as you do it. Well, as we move forward through the season, I will admit it could be worse, it could be better, but I think that's what makes watching college football so exciting from week to week. It's definitely not predictable, but at 2-1 with a lot of potential untapped and a lot of the people that we know should be contributing still having an opportunity to step forward, I think a very successful season lies in front of us. So we'll be back later in the week to preview Michigan. We'll see you this Saturday at Shamrock Jacks at 3:30. Finally getting back to an afternoon game, which I think the players may like a little bit better because they have not played overly well the last 2 nights. So either pick it up on NBC or join me at Shamrock Jacks in Irondequoit for Fighting Irish Football. Until then, this is Talking Irish, and as always, go Irish.
Let me tell it to you as clean as I can. We have 95 players here, so accomplished as athletes in high school. We gave them full scholarships to the best football program in the country. NCAA regulations allow us to dress just 60 for home games, which means at least 35 scholarship players are going to be watching the games from the stands. So if any of you has any fantasies about running out of that stadium tunnel with your gold helmet shining in the sun, you best leave them right here. If you 15 dreamers out there, maybe we'll keep 1 or 2. My job is to basically beat the shit out of you for the next 5 days. And whoever is still standing at the end, maybe we'll use for our scout teams. You'll be running the opposition's plays week in and week out.